to Season 3 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country who are joined by a surprise guest each episode. We're glad you're here. We hope you enjoy the ride. This is RecLess.
You guys good?
Let's do this. What is this, 49?
49.
It is.
That means Jay gets 50. Jay's getting all the round numbers.
Yeah, well, this was supposed to be 50, and
Yep.
I think that might have been intentional. I'm not sure. Your ploys. All right. You guys good to go for sure?
Do it.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome to RecLess, everyone. We want to highlight here that today we are recording just before the NRPA conference, and this will actually release after. So there's some excitement, some prep, some haircuts. So here on RecLess, we are trying to make you all smarter and more knowledgeable on the world of parks and recreation with my two friends, Shane Mize and Jay Tryon. We are now in episode 6 of season 3, which is our 49th episode. Very close to the big 5-0. We've almost made it. How you guys doing today?
Good.
I'm good, man. I've been doing some prep work for conference this morning, so excited.
What does prep work for conference look like? The haircut?
No, like looking at scheduling, looking at the meetings and the sessions I want to go to, and the just where I need to be when I need to be there.
I haven't.
I know you may not do that.
I have not even looked at the schedule.
Yeah, me
I
neither.
barely know the panel I'm on, what time that starts. So
It's funny because obviously like they have the app and everything's in the app, but I'm still very old school where I type up like days and times of like I want to be here at this time and be there.
do you really?
Yeah, it's weird.
You type it up and carry it like in paper, or do you type it up, send it to you in an email? Like, how
It's a
analog
piece of-
are you?
I printed it this morning. It's in a piece of paper.
Can you please pull it out a few times and just do like a cross-reference while we're together?
Amazing.
Let us know what's going on. You know,
It's not like minute by minute. It's just like, hey, like we're recording a podcast on Monday at 10 a.m. or Wednesday at 10 a.m. Like I want to know that. And I want to have it written down because there's a lot of times that we have to be places. You know that.
Calendar app would take care of a lot of that, though.
And
That does help.
No, doesn't work.
Well, I debated talking a little bit about conference, but I figured this would be coming out after. So we're going to go in a different direction. What I neglect to say during my hosting responsibilities, as we've all highlighted, Jay is the master of hosting.
Right.
I am your host today, Tom Venniro, and we are going to have our little pre-discussion based on a topic we've talked a little bit about with some guests and between ourselves. We've talked somewhat about recruitment and retention, and today I just wanted to focus on the recruitment piece. I'm working on a group with the Academy that is putting together a really great effort to basically create a recruitment video that can be shared by any and all, right? So it's going to be universal. They're going to maybe have a couple different variations if it's possible, and so they've come a long way. It's been a very efficient and a great process. So they should be or already released a survey just to get some information out from professionals to, again, just get some feedback that might help us shape that video. So what I wanted to focus on with you two gentlemen in our pre-show conversation was, what do you do from a recruitment level? We know that we talk about the struggle. We've had this conversation with a lot of our colleagues that this profession is, it's not a teacher. It's not a doctor. It's not a lawyer. It's not those professions that everybody talks about, a police officer, whatever it is. You just hear about those on the regular, where parks and recreation professionals, quite frankly, most of the people I meet who do not know what I do, when I tell them what I do, it's like, really? You're what? You're a parks and recreation director? What does that entail? So, it's clearly not a mainstream profession. So yeah, that's how I want to start it. How do you guys recruit? What are you guys doing to get the word out, the good word about what we do? And I'd like to hear it either from a perspective of, a general outlook, or if you wanted to focus more on, younger individuals or part-timers or full-timers, maybe more of the innovative and unique ways that you try to reach people.
I can go. Yeah, I know we've touched on this a few different times, and I think one thing that I've been trying to do over the last year is take a different approach to it, because I feel like obviously, when looking back at it from the last 10, 15 years, it was always just like, oh, let's post a job online. Let's share it with the state association. Let's, just rely on the people to find about jobs versus going out there to the community. I think in the last year, one of the things I've done is try to build more relationships with organizations or community groups that could benefit from learning more about what we do. We talked a lot about schools and talking to get in touch with your local universities and your colleges and even high schools. Like we go directly to the high schools now for summer camp counselors, and we're meeting with, groups of school students at a time to make sure they know about that. And, whether that is a summer camp job, whether that's a referee for a youth sports, whether that's, part-time working at our lake and helping out in different roles, like that's, it may not lead to full-time, but it could lead to full-time. So it's still like educational towards the industry. But I think the number one is just kind of building relationships with a variety of different cohorts in your community that would then share the word with their, clientele or their members, if it's an association. And just the more folks that you can share information with, the better, then the bigger impact it'll have, because more people are going to know not just about that job and that post, but even about what you're doing and what the vision for your department is.
How about you, Shane?
When I have an open position, I usually write down my profile of what I'm looking for, whether it's, and I use some working genius language now as well. How far downstream they are from me, or what am I thinking that position is going to need. But whatever that profile is, innovative or procedure oriented or safety oriented or whatever, I write that down. And then I start to try to figure out who fits that profile in the industry. And I reach out to them. I reach out to them to find out if they would be interested in that posting when it posts, if they're not, and a lot of times they aren't. A lot of times you reach out to a lot of people who, for one reason or seven others, are happy where they're at or can't move, family obligations, whatever.
Or the director that they might be working for.
They're trying to be nice. They just don't want to say they don't want to work for me. But then I ask them if, okay, great, totally get it. But here's the profile I'm looking for. I thought of you because of that. Who do you think would fit this profile, these 7 or 8 things that I'm looking for? And then I'll reach out to them. So I really do recruit. And I felt like I've always recruited. Like when I was coaching, that was part of the things that you had to do. I remember calling high school kids at one time and trying to get them to go to Hardin-Simmons and other campuses that I worked on over time. So you kind of, I've just always brought that over. Like I'm always trying to stay connected. I'm always looking at who are the brightest and the best. And I stay involved with the Young Professional Network because of our involvement, but selfishly, I like to see who's bubbling up, who's the next up and coming thing. But I create a profile. I start to look for those people. I really do target 4 or 5 people I think fit that profile, reach out to them individually and let them know the job's posted. Would they be interested? A lot of times they say, no, we're not interested in moving right now. And I'm like, cool. Who do you know that would? Who is an up and comer that you're impressed with? And I'll reach out to those people. Jeff ultimately was in my hiring profile. I was looking for someone. I thought of Jeff. I thought of another person. I reached out, and I originally reached out to another person as well. They went through the process, and we got all the way to the commitment stage, and they just couldn't wrap their head around moving to the Austin area from where they were coming from. And so then I reached back out and talked to my staff and had another chance to say, okay, what are we looking for this profile, and talk to Jeff and essentially open the position long enough for him to apply. And then we reclosed it and re-interviewed. And so you obviously have to work within the parameters of your HR departments and your teams. But there's nothing wrong with creating a profile that you're looking for, writing a job description or a post on LinkedIn or whatever that really kind of hammers home the innovation or the procedures or the autonomy that you believe you're going to give this person. And then as y'all know, I put them through an assessment process. I really take them through their paces, but everything about the assessment and everything about the interview questions for me is refining. Can they fit the profile I think they can? Are they holding up to the characteristics and the values of the position I'm expecting? So yeah, I'm pretty active in it.
For Esther and our listeners out there.
Esther and Becca. Esther just had a kid last night.
Oh, congrats to Esther.
Elizabeth Kate is less than a day old. One of my new nieces. Congrats to her and Trevor.
Very, very nice. Congrats. And as I was alluding to, you were referring to Jeff Ashee,
Yep,
one of our former guests and
that's
your
right.
assistant
Assistant
recreation
director.
director.
When I say take active role, I do. I don't. I have never thought anything, but especially greatness just happens. I don't think you fall into greatness. I don't think you fall into intentionality. And so I've always been very active with the people I'm trying to fill these positions with. It doesn't always mean I hire the people I think I'm going to hire. Our Forster came from the Allen area, and I was not expecting, even in the interview process, at times thinking he was going to be the best candidate. Going through the assessment and going through the interview process, he absolutely has fit with us and has been great. So it's just one of those things that I'm pretty intentional, trying to make sure we're hitting the mark I'm looking for. And I know the profile of the person I'm recruiting.
Yeah, well, I appreciate both of your answers. You both took it in as we typically do at different directions. And Jay, I really enjoy what you talked about is making the connections to try to spread the word. Shane, you took it in a direction of recruitment of what I would it appears to be more of a full-time position, right? You know, someone who you may not have to look locally, right? So I'll just add a couple points because I don't want to leave our guests waiting. We have the
Barlow Tiger.
Barolo Tiger joining
Barolo?
us. Yes,
Barolo? Is that
Barolo.
like the tie?
It is not. It is not. If neither of you know what it is, then that's well, it is. It's a wine
I have no
reference.
idea.
Oh, it's
Wine
wine?
reference. So
Yeah, I would
just
not
to
know that.
add a little perspective on that, you know, the intentionality of recruitment has been something that we've been taking on recently, and that goes as far as the aesthetics of a job posting, right? So we've always had those typical job postings, which is a one pager with a bunch of bullet points on it, right? Turning that into a brochure for every position. And I know a lot of higher profile positions will put that when they're recruiting across the country. We do that locally now, and it's not just focusing on, let's say, a salary range, because let's be honest, Parks and Recreation, we've had that discussion before. We can't always compete with a lot of other jobs out there. So highlighting some of those other fringe benefits, right? What else do you get out of this job, which we've talked about over and over again. There are a lot of perks of being in Parks and Recreation. And, you know, Jay, you had said getting into schools, so I'm not going to elaborate on that, but one of the really great byproducts of me joining SUNY Brockport as an adjunct is being able to spread the word that way, right? I've always
Oh yeah.
gone into a college, maybe and been a guest lecturer for one class or whatever, but having them for a full semester has led to a lot of opportunities for my department.
Yeah.
We currently have someone that was in my class last semester working our before and after school program, right? And so these are, that's just one small example, but that's a really great way to get that word out there, is getting your foot in the door with these universities. Another program for individuals to look into that we've recently benefited from over the last 3 years is we've entered in a contract with SUNY Brockport to be an approved site for the federal work study program. Every year we've now had 1 to 2 individuals, or every season 1 to 2 individuals, and that program's amazing depending on the agreement you have with your university. For us, it's 75% funded by the university, by the SUNY system, or by the federal work study program. So we're hiring these individuals at the rate, we set the rate that we choose, right? And then that school or that university, that entity through the system they're actually fronting 75%, which is a huge benefit for us financially and allows us to do a lot more. And those are usually individuals who would never know about jobs that we would have in Parks and Recreation. So something for people to look into if they may have that opportunity in their own areas. All right, let's not keep our guests waiting any longer. So we have the Barolo Tiger here with us today, a very distinguished guest, very excited about this guest. So I'm going to go over some points to give you all a little bit of a clue of our guest. This guest is a most recent, and by most recent, I mean maybe a month ago, inductee into the Academy. All right, now that is a long list. There is a lot of new inductees. Congratulations to that class, but one of those. Also an adjunct lecturer and professor since 2006 in the field of Parks and Recreation. Our guest is a fellow Disney enthusiast. So I am also extremely excited for that, as I see Jay and Shane not give any reaction to the Disney mention there. But also a boxing enthusiast. Holds a doctorate in business administration. Holds their CPRE. Jay, you're
I think
seeming like you might have
I have an idea.
Okay, all right. Now here's an interesting one. Our guest was born in Madison, Wisconsin, but lived there very briefly. Since then, has lived in one state and worked in 3 agencies within that state. Has some published research on public and private partnerships. Any idea before I give you what I believe are the...
Initials TL?
I think you got it. I think you got
That's
it.
who
Yes.
I was thinking.
Yes, our guest has worked in 3 agencies in the state of Florida, and also has with his current town, which was incorporated in 2000 and was the first recreation employee hired in 2004, basically creating a department from scratch. Everybody, please welcome Deputy Town Manager, Miami Lakes, Dr. Tony Lopez, aka the Barolo
Welcome.
Tiger.
Hello.
Hey guys, how's it
There you
going?
go.
Hey, how
Tony.
you doing?
Great to be here.
Congrats on the academy.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, that's great.
They did that just so city manager you'll show up. Every time someone goes into city management, we always lose them. They stop coming to our conferences.
Yes, yes. And Tony will be in attendance for the banquet, so we're excited to see you there and share in your success. So, I want to get started. I listed a whole lot of accolades. You've done a lot for this profession and had a really great career thus far. And we talked about that recruitment. So Tony and I serve on COPART, Council of Accreditation, Parks, Recreation, and Leisure. That's another connection that I have with Tony. And Tony also helps serve on that subcommittee or task force that's creating that recruitment tool for the Academy. As we talked about just a few moments ago or mentioned, Tony, you have some extensive work as an adjunct. So you've been doing that for a long time now. You've created a department from scratch. I'd like you to tell us and just kind of add to the discussion we had earlier about your story of recruitment, why that's so important for you to go out there and educate individuals, young and old, about the profession, about a profession that, again, doesn't necessarily get the limelight as everyone else.
One of the things that I've been able and been fortunate to do is I've started teaching in sports management programs. And one of the main reasons I was brought on was because of that Parks and Recreation background. A lot of times people enter the sports management field, they think about working in professional sports or collegiate sports, but Parks and Recreation tends to fall to the wayside. And it actually probably has a greater depth of opportunity, not only to start in the field, but also reach leadership roles. That's one of the main reasons that I've stayed teaching and stayed on as a professor, is being able to cultivate that knowledge, that awareness about Parks and Recreation as a field, and ultimately share the purpose of what we do. I like to tell a lot of professionals, especially in sports management, that are considering different options. I like to tell them that, in Parks and Recreation, you not only have an opportunity to get your hands on projects, but you actually get to see the impact that you can make on a community in real time. You're not sitting behind a desk. You're not sitting behind a desk selling tickets. You're actually interacting with your community and actually being able to make that direct impact. Some other things that, I've been very fortunate through internships. Internships have been a great source of recruitment, and so much so that our current parks director was my former intern and former student.
Oh, wow.
Who came through our system, and he's been a product. And I've seen that through a whole host of different students across the country now that have left the program and have become successful Parks and Recreation professionals. Those are some of the things that we've been able to do. Speaking in seminars, guest lecturing, like you mentioned, Tom, is a great opportunity to also sell the profession. I think that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about in this career development task force, is how do we sell this profession to people, to encourage them, to recruit. And that's been a long-standing discussion, I believe, in our field. And no one's really, I think, solved it, or at least attempted to solve it. And I think this is one of the main reasons the Academy is really striving to put this video out. We've talked about social media and how we can do snippets of this video. We're launching a survey to get an understanding from existing professionals like yourself to give us feedback on how you came into the profession. But I also think there's a lost opportunity within our own parks departments. I always tell people, how many of us are posting our jobs at the park? How many of us are taking an opportunity with our counselors to bring Parks and Recreation degree programs into our park system or into our parks department to talk about Parks and Recreation as a career opportunity. Sometimes we need to bring the career to the people and make them aware of it because they may not even have thought about it. And a lot of times, most of our stories seem to be, we fell into it. So those are some of the things that, come off the top of my head of things that we've done for recruitment or considered to do for recruitment.
Yeah, I've always felt that was the real benefit too of having the opportunity to serve as an adjunct lecturer. Practitioners versus educators, right? Educators are great. They do it in their own way. The practitioner side of it, though, is it's just a whole nother experience and way to get that message across to your students or to those students, right? That this is now you have a professor who's been living it, doing it every day, and can really, paint the picture and provide that experience.
Tony, I want to ask you a quick kind of two-part question based on what you were saying about being an adjunct in that group. So when you first meet your students that are in sports management, what are they typically looking to do in a career? And then number two, when you start talking to them about Park and Rec, what is their initial reaction?
That's a great question because before Tony goes, when we hear sports management at our age, I think all of us think Jerry Maguire. Like, I think we even said on this show, that movie ruined a lot of sports management because we all thought, oh, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go be sports managers and we're all going to work in athletics or whatever. So it's interesting to know now that what the youth that you're dealing with, is there another movie that shaped them, a TV show that has shaped them, something else that has shaped them over the way?
Yeah, a lot of the times they end up, like Tony said, in a ticket office for a AAA organization, right?
Well,
that's what they're doing.
Like the movie at all. Yeah.
So I like to give them some general data points. A lot of them, most of them are still either they want to be a sports agent, they want to be a general manager of a professional team. And I like to give them some general data, very basic data. And I tell them, how many professional NBA teams are there? How many Major League Baseball teams are there, right? There's 30, 32, whatever it is in a prospective league. Well, then I tell them there's 34 municipalities in Miami-Dade County, Florida.
Wow.
So the odds of you becoming a director or a high-level executive just in South Florida are greater than being a professional general manager. Now multiply that times all the municipalities, all the agencies across the country, you have exponentially multitude of opportunities available to you in Parks and Recreation. I give them the data about salaries. I give them the data about the potential roles and the variety of roles that you could be in. And I basically just tell them that for awareness. And I try to, if your dream is to be that, more power to you. Go ahead and pursue it. Go for it. Just know that a lot of general managers have connections or past players. You got to get your foot in the door, which in whatever profession you choose to, right? But more importantly, with Parks and Recreation, I just try to sell that there is a whole multitude of opportunities that you may not have even considered. I always used to say, and I still say, you want to be a general manager, but, for example, in my case, I ended up being the general manager of a park system for Miami Lakes. And it was an amazing opportunity to meet. And you get a lot of those same benefits coming into Parks and Recreation when you view it from a certain perspective.
So you mentioned 34 other agencies in the Miami-Dade County area. We had Barbie Hernandez on, who I would assume is a colleague of yours, contemporary of yours, both in the Parks and Rec world, but also in city management world. I don't know if you heard her episode or if you saw everything that happened to her when she was city manager in Doral from a distance. When we talked to her, I've always talked about how intrigued I am about Miami, but I also think I would never live there for a couple of reasons, and the heat and the Disney and everything else being one of them. But there's also something about Miami that there's a crazy to it, right? There's this element to it that it's a bit of a spectacle in some ways of what's going on out there. Were you surprised what happened with Barbie? Did that put you in a pause? Were you already into city management? Were you going into city management? Did the other folks in the area say, wow, that's typical. That's not something that was shocking, or, I just would love to get your feedback on the city management process, transition, seeing what happened to Barbie. How do you internalize that when stuff like that happens?
Yeah, first and foremost, Barbie's a colleague, spectacular, incredible professional in our field. And it is, something that I like to say it's par for the course. Politics play a role, and they play a role in all of our communities, right? And sometimes, depending on the nature of your community, it could be more magnified because of the nature of the city or the complexities involved or the media coverage that sometimes brings these types of issues to light. City management is not for the faint of heart, the profession. It is navigating a lot of challenges. It is navigating and providing leadership. It is the problems come to you and you're accountable for them. And you also have to manage people and manage personalities, which I tend to say is the hardest part of any job, right? It's not necessarily the job, it's the people. So when you have all those factors and all those different variables, you're going to end up, and it's going to be sometimes a challenge in some agencies, particularly here in South Florida. It is so dynamic, so diverse that you enter into a great city management opportunity, or you see one and it prospectively looks interesting, but then you also have to navigate the culture. The terms for an election, you gotta take into account. How long are the people who have supported you, right? If you have a majority, how long are they going to be there till? You got to take that into account. You got to take into account a contract and the length of that contract. And there's a lot of these aspects that if anybody's considering and taking that step, you really need to think through. And even from the form of government, the charter of that community, in essence, their constitution, they vary across the communities, even here in South Florida. I mean, you have different forms of government, different charters, different ways of people how they hire people, department heads. And you really need to gauge an understanding if you're thinking about taking on those roles. And sometimes, for someone who's an incredible professional, you can be doing the best job possible, delivering the best results to the community, but that change can happen, and all of a sudden personalities change, and that's the nature of the profession at this point. And it's something that, us young people younger professionals are seeing, right, as we look into progressing into these types of roles. And if I were to tell any of our professionals in parks that are considering city management, just do your homework. Each community is going to be different. Each community is going to have its nuances, and ultimately understanding the people is going to be one of the most important things that you're going to have to navigate and deal with.
So let me have a follow-up. So 2 of the 3 podcast hosts here have some sort of interest or have potentially considered city management. And just as a guess, it's not the one with the beard. It's the other 2. But we've talked to a couple city managers now that were Park and Rec professionals, Jason Mangum, most recently, but also Barbie. And I would ask you the same thing I would ask them, I think, in some ways, is what is the most essential skill that a Parks and Rec pro has with them in their toolbox that they take with them into the city management role, right? What is that one thing that makes us better at this, or unique at this, and it may be better in a different way than others that matriculate through PD or finance or public works, etc.?
It is that community engagement skill. And I like to say all of them. And because one of the main things I used to tell Parks and Rec professionals, especially those that are considering, moving up the ladder or considering city manager roles, is I like to say that the Parks and Recreation field and the department, when you look at government, is actually probably one of the most varied, if not the most varied department in terms of the skill sets that you receive. Because I like to say that it includes a little bit of every department within it, right? Yeah. We are responsible for the public safety of all the people that go to our park system. We are responsible for the finance and the budgeting of what goes on in our operation. We have aspects of communications and community engagement and information technology and innovation. Even when we build our facilities, we need to have general knowledge about accessibility and building codes. So I like to say that our department and our professionals are uniquely ready for these types of leadership positions, but more importantly, that community engagement piece, right? We are front facing. The assets that we take care of are those that are used by a large majority of the residents of a community. They see it, they feel it, they touch it, and we're the ones who are responsible for that experience, right? We're about creating these experiences. I like to say, and the term used to be it is creating community, but we're also about creating memorable experiences for people. And that's the business that I believe we're really in.
Tony, I wanted to go two different directions with what you had just shared with everybody, because there's some real great insight there. And yeah, the people management, the community management, right? That's you've obviously done some really great things in your role with Miami Lakes, with the Parks and Recreation team, for them to come to you and say, you're the person, you're the one that we want to do this. So I want to maybe just go back a little bit into your history with Miami Lakes. One of our former guests, Katie Keller with Pittsburgh, and then Jay Tryon to an extent with Indian Trails, have had some experience with starting a department from scratch. For some people, that would be their dream, right? You have a blank canvas, the artists out there, the innovators. For other people, that might be quite daunting, right? There's not really an infrastructure of services and policies and procedures, and you're kind of responsible for the success or failure of that process. So can you kind of take us back through your story of creating a department from scratch like that? Because I'm sure it's common, we just maybe don't hear the story very often.
Yeah, so and not only just coming in creating departments from scratch, starting at a very young age. I came pretty much straight out of college and got to this community and realized that I was the 7th employee hired by the community. And they're like, well, we have 101 parks here, and you're going to be responsible for overseeing the park system. We don't have any park rules and regulations yet. We have 45 pieces of playground equipment that we've now assumed from our local county. We have infrastructure assumed from a local county. So here you go, figure it out. And at first, I came in, my background was in sports. My passion was sports and recreation. I knew about putting on programs, but honestly, knowing about turf, knowing about sports field lighting, maintenance, all those things were very new to me. And but I still had a supervisor who just told me, that's fine, you'll learn. I really was able to develop good relationships with people that were experts, or the people that were overseeing these operations for our community when I came in, and really develop strong relationships with them, that we worked as a team and collaborated. And I was able to build those relationships with our youth sports program providers and our summer camp providers, and got them all on the same page in the sense of, hey, we're trying to build something here. We're trying to build a park system. And it really came natural to me because I grew up in a park system. Whenever I faced a decision, especially with a startup situation, I always went back to when I was a kid, and what would I have wanted to see as part of the park system when I was a kid. I like to reminisce and think back of times, for example, playing video games, right? Playing, whether it be FIFA soccer, Madden, all these video games. And I used to look at the turf fields, and I used to see all the field patterns. And I'm like, why can't we do that here? And because of the collaboration that I had with some of my staff and my employees, I mean, we were a parks department. We had circle mow patterns on our soccer fields. We had light and dark for football. Those little things that really didn't cost us anything different, but made a visual impact. I mean, these are things that we were able to do to kind of differentiate ourselves from other park systems, that we were taking, creating this park system and trying to make improvements, right? Make it better for our community moving forward. So a lot of work went into building the park system. I mean, I still remember sitting on phone books when there's phone books was still a thing, waiting for the first phone lines to be installed in our first park office building, and having our first park rules and regulations passed, and having, the first waiver forms for our recreation program. And luckily, having a good network of mentors and relationships with other parks departments really helped with that along the way.
Tony is a Robert Crawford Award winner for Esther and Becca. That's the National Award for Young Professional Excellence. And for Jay didn't know that either. But you have been such a huge supporter of young professional stuff along the way. I mentioned you, I believe, on the Michael Klitzking episode, where I had reached out to you and Michael when I was trying to start Young Professional Network, and I was going to go rogue and do this. Like I said on that thing, I don't think I told you and Michael how rogue I was going to go. I just asked y'all if y'all would be on a panel. Y'all were like, yeah, sure. Y'all were great. I was going to use y'all as the building blocks for me to make the argument the YPN needed to happen. But I remember vividly, as the YPN started, that you were so happy for us. At conference every year, I'd see you, and you would key in on, hey, how's it going? How's the YPN going? And even years after, when we talked, that's been something that you've always been interested in. And I think we actually maybe got to even meet who your director is now, maybe when they weren't your director yet. I think, didn't you have them at a conference one year? And I think you introduced us potentially at that time. And so what is it about your time, as you mentioned, you were a very young director, right? And you kind of had to do that on your own. What is it about the Young Professional Network that you've had such an affinity for?
Well, even before that, there was no Young Professional Network.
Right. Yeah.
And I still remember, I had a great opportunity in 2005 to serve as a Young Professional Fellow. I was partnered with Tom Farrell, who was the former NRPA president. And we had a lot of these discussions. And when I came into the field, and that's one of the main reasons that from thinking about sports to Parks and Recreation, was there was a great need for young professionals at that time. There was, we had a projection that a large amount of people in the next 5 to 10 year range were going to be retiring. There weren't enough young professionals entering the field to take that on. And I still remember in 2005 talking to Linda Katowski and mentioning to her the need for some level of a gathering for young professionals, and not just a casual conference. I think if we want to build a bench, right, or have this depth for our future field and of leaders, we need something. And out of that came the young, and out of that discussion, more and more we saw more opportunities getting promoted for young professionals. And what's interesting about that fellowship opportunity back in 2005, I just remember applying. And they were saying there's only 8 of them were available. Yeah. They're picking 1 out of each region. And I'm thinking, wow, this is like a huge honor to have been selected. I got to the fellowship meeting and they only had 4 out of 8 because they couldn't fill the fellows with enough young professionals applying, because they didn't, from my perspective, they probably didn't even know that it was an opportunity.
They didn't have a grouping of young professionals they could market to or talk to.
Yeah.
And that was like a big discussion point that I had was, well, we need to bring awareness to these things if you want young professionals to get more involved. And now that I see the Young Professional Network and Shane, I remember, I mean, you were one of the first ones to really be at the forefront. And that's what made me happy about it, right? Is having that next generation take it on. And now you see it on the message board, you see the growth of the network. Those are the things that really make me happy about the profession. And one of the main reasons that I still stay involved is that component of developing the future of our profession, because that's our bench.
Yeah.
I mean, the sustainability of this profession is really dependent on networks such as the YPN, and also us as the incoming leadership of the Parks and Recreation field. It is important for us to continue to support that and push NRPA and all of the surrounding professionals to continue to support that initiative, because of, I mean, we've seen the growth and the participation from our young professionals from it.
Linda's a great name because she's one that when I was assigned to her, first of all, I used to love how the fellowship did it, where they assigned you to board of directors. Like when you got that, you were walking around with people that were busy. Jay pre-show talked about how he types out his schedule like he's in 1947 Americas. But when I got paired with Linda, like I got to meet her. I talked to her over the phone ahead of time. This is my mentor. I got paired with her. She handed me a sheet, and that sheet was typed out, had all the things highlighted that she thought I should be doing. Some of them she was going to be at as well. And man, pack your running shoes. There wasn't any hangout time. That lady she was moving and shaking. She was on the board of directors. She was in meetings all day. And I was just like her shadow, just trying to play catch up, with her and the energy she had. But she was one of the first people that when I said, there's got to be more for young professionals, that she didn't think that was a crazy idea, that she thought, that's something that could be done. It's so great to hear that you were peppering her with that years before I was, right? That's why it's so much more than one person started the YPN, because the seeds were planted years before. And what all of us did for the YPN at its infancy, none of us have any involvement with it now. And what the shit we see now and how we're so impressed with the publication and stuff, we have so little to do with that it's always crazy to hear anyone get any real credit for it, because it's just one of those things that it was an evolution. Like I was there in a moment and I got to advocate for it, but you were advocating before I got there, and the folks that have it now have got it in such a great place, and they're doing such incredible things with it. I mean, we couldn't do that publication now if we wanted to. Jay would be printing it and coloring it in with, markers and paper. So what's funny is I sent it to my wife, that publication that Jay sent us. And my wife was like, yeah, they do that in Canva, Shane. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. I don't even
Shane,
have a clue.
that's what our website's on.
Is it?
The RecLess website is on Canva.
So
yes.
I don't know anything. I've never been to it. But no, I just think what they're doing is great. And I love to see other people that have always been such a big fan of it from the get-go.
Yeah.
So
well, hey, I don't think you'd be picking on Linda for typing out papers the way you pick on me. So I might have to have a talk with her, because her and I obviously have something in common, and you praise her,
not age,
but I get ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
You're a little younger than her, dude. She grew up in a different time.
But when she did that, how old was she? Because that was what, 20 years ago?
Be careful. She's going to
Just
hear
saying.
this, maybe. Just be careful.
Yeah.
When I was paired with her, Twitter had just started, and I was telling her about Twitter, and it was blowing her mind. And it was
just to show how old you are, Twitter doesn't even exist anymore. It's not called Twitter
or whatever. But I let her tweet from my profile, and I think she called herself the Virgin Tweeter or something. It was hilarious, but it was in Salt Lake City, whatever that was, probably 15, 20 years ago now. But times have changed.
Okay, Tony, I got a question for you. So you obviously are extremely involved in so many different things. You're talking earlier about getting involved with academy projects. You're teaching at a local university. You and I also have something in common, because we are teaching together at NRPA Supervisory Management School. So something those two guys can't say they have. So we are regents together. And I'm just curious, what motivates you to have all these extra requirements, tasks, jobs, whatever you want to call on the side, that in a way, they're tied to your position, but they're also they're different because they bring different joy, or they have a different requirement for them. But, what's motivated you to do that? And what are you looking forward to about teaching this year for the first time at SMS?
Yeah. So, I mean, motivation is all you guys and the people in the profession. I mean, for me, I made a goal of mine that not to forget the profession, right? And more importantly, to be able to give back to the profession that has helped me so much as a professional develop and build a career. I think it's only the right thing to do, to be able to contribute and continued development of our professionals, because I think there's still a connection, from whether you stay in Parks and Recreation or not. It's all public service. It's all interrelated. The experiences that can be shared benefit everyone in our field, whether you're thinking about stepping into administration or not. But more importantly, for me, it's about giving back and being able to stay connected to a field that I am incredibly passionate about. And, and that's the same reason that I'm excited about the Supervisors Management School. I mean, it's opportunity to meet people, connect with people. I like to say, you never know out of any classroom who that person's going to become or where they're going to go. I like to say all of my students become and have become part of my network for the most part. And there's students that today I call to bounce ideas off of, or people that have attended sessions that I call to bounce ideas off of, right? So, that's really what drives me to stay involved. And in terms of the instructor's school and the supervisor's school, just that opportunity to connect with the whole new group of professionals, talk about experiences, challenges that they may be encountering, and I might have challenges that they may have seen and have navigated. But I'm really looking forward to that opportunity with you, Jay, and being able to have that experience and also learn myself.
So staying connected with all those students, Jill Geller was on first season, and she gave Tom a lot of credit for keeping her, I guess, Tom, was it perspective or mindset young? Like he was always giving her a fresh perspective on things. And so, and Jay has talked about always mentoring younger people because of how much he learns from them as much as they learn from him. Is that network just keep you like freshly thinking about perspectives in ways that maybe it would have gone more stale from your perspective if you weren't always dipping into what the younger generation was thinking and how they're interpreting things and their filter? Are you using that in a work sense?
Absolutely. Like I've said, a lot of times the people are the toughest part of the job, but at the same time, the people are your biggest asset.
Sure.
in our positions. So being able to continuously build and hone a network of professionals at all stages, I think has a great benefit to any one of us. More importantly, not only all stages, but the evolution for myself, starting a network locally, then starting a network at a state level, then starting a network at a national level. That progression is a continuous process and a continuous evolution over the past 20 years of my career. But I always am looking for that network, leveraging that network. When we talked about recruitment, and I think, Shane, you brought up at the outset of the podcast of who you called to talk about X to person, or yeah, you were looking for somebody in your role and you reached out to some people and got their thoughts. That's what, to me, really building that network is about, and being able to have those resources, whether it be a local, state, or national level. But we all have different perspectives and different experiences that we can share. At the same time, there's going to be some commonalities. We may be navigating through some challenges together, and I may have a solution that you may not have thought of, or you have a solution that I may not have thought of that may work in our respective agencies. So all of these are main benefits about, just keeping that network together.
So you mentioned earlier, you had this really creative perspective when you were a younger professional in Parks and Rec, right? That and what you brought from even as a kid, like the innovation with the field layouts and all the cool designs. We've had, as I mentioned earlier, we had Barbie and Jason. I think we've also had Farrell, and Noons has stepped up in administration as well. So we've had quite a few guests that have transitioned. And I, of the three of us, have always poo-pooed the concept. I'm like, no, don't go into city management. It sounds terrible. But maybe I'm being softened up on that. But to me, I fear that you will lose the ability to be creative a little bit when you go back, when you go above, because there's some departments you have to manage that maybe aren't as creative, right? And Jason kind of set the record straight that you do want someone creative in finance as well as everything else potentially. But I guess my question is, in your current role, where do you get to express, or I guess express is where do you get to express your creativity now that you've stepped out of a department where creativity is always welcomed in Parks and Rec, whether it's the most staunch conservative or the more liberal folks? They want to see a creative, fun Parks and Rec department in general, but maybe they don't want to see that with their water department, or maybe they don't want to see that with their financial side. So in your current role, where do you still get to express your creativity?
That's a good question. So, I think when you step into a role, no matter where it is, you get to define certain parameters for yourself and how you're going to engage and interact with the professionals that may be under you. And in this case, I oversee 6 city departments. But the biggest way I express creativity is, and actually, I encourage our department heads to be creative. With those creative ideas, they get brought to me, and then I get an opportunity to be creative with their creativity.
In the support of it or the funding of it?
Well, or not only that, and I like to ask the question, well, have we thought about it this way? Have you considered this? Have we thought about this? So the role really has to do with looking at all the angles. When
it's like collaboration, real collaborate.
You get a creative idea from a department head. It's and any idea, right? Any idea that we may come up with is not necessarily fine-tuned, right? It's just an idea that I'm bringing it to you. What do you think? And the opportunity when you step into administration is the ability to fine-tune that, working with your department head, but at the same time, in an administrative role, like in a city management or a deputy city manager role or an assistant city manager role, now you have to actually navigate, how do we get this to be the final product, right? How do we get this idea to not only become an idea, but get it to the finish line? And that requires a different sense of creativity. It requires a creativity of which elected officials or who will support this in our community. How will our city manager perceive it, or how will our elected officials perceive it? You have to now think creatively on getting those ideas that your staff may have, and how do you get it to the finish line? And that's one of the key things that I think in my day-to-day job that I face all the time. I get lots of ideas thrown at me, and you got to help fine-tune it to get it to that finish line so it feels like a success, not only for the department head, but for the organization. Another thing that we've done is I pushed strongly to have an innovation officer.
That's cool.
And in our community, yes, they do information technology, but that person also helps with performance management, helps craft strategic planning and visioning. And I pushed that to be a silo of ideas. I got an opportunity to visit our Amazon warehouse here, and they had just a room and a box for ideas. Well, we have a person who takes a lot of those ideas and fine-tunes them and works them also to help us get to the finish line, and how do they impact the organization and the strategic priorities. But I think that's another thing that has helped also develop creativity within our organization.
Shane, I want to pick on you for a second because I'm intrigued by, I'm just intrigued by this. So you say that would be a reason why you wouldn't want to pursue it from a lack of creativity. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, there's a couple of reasons I want to pursue it, but yeah, okay. I feel like it doesn't, I feel like it's a forced thing for my profile. What I do really well, I feel like it'd be forced if I don't think I could do what I do as well as I do it as the public works director or even as an ACM. Yeah, but that's my thought.
But isn't it your responsibility as a leader in whatever department you run? If you want to be creative, you can't have the luxury to be creative.
Yeah, I can be creative, but I feel like there's more creativity bred in a Parks and Rec department than there is, and maybe also in like a library, than there would be in IT finance. Like, I feel like it would still be limited to the creativity of just even this widget or that widget or whatever.
I know, but I think that's where the beauty of someone like you that wants to quote unquote like push the envelope in a leadership role and get someone to be more creative that would think of things differently. That the finance department may never have looked at something through a creative lens, but if their town manager, city manager, or new ACM is pursuing more creativity, that could benefit that department and the city as a whole. So I'm almost flipping your thought process to challenge you why it wouldn't work.
Just
And you don't have to have an answer.
I just like paper pushing. It feels like you push paper up, push paper down.
A lot of discernment right there.
Yeah.
Okay, Tony's got something.
Yeah, and I just want to add one of the biggest advantages that I have in this role is obviously having come from the parks department, but I firmly sell and I firmly tell people in parks, we have the distinct advantage of putting ourselves in the user's shoes. We have, when we talk about engineers and architects, engineers make things work. The architects draw these pretty pictures. The engineers have to make them work and they think in these boxes. But we are very uniquely inclined to put ourselves in the user's shoes. How does that feel? How does that facility feel? How does that experience feel?
Yeah.
What is it like walking through the doors of that community center on paper or that park in paper? And now I get an opportunity to not only look at it from a parks perspective, but I also get to look at it on our roadways, on traffic, on public safety. How will the user feel in each of those public service experiences? And that in itself requires a lot of thought and creativity of how you combine the two and how you think of these things to be able to deliver public services as a whole and impact the community.
But a Parks and Rec department inherently has a bunch of people that are used to service and public facing. Trying
Correct.
to get public works employees to care about the rideability of a road just seems like a tougher hill to climb than to convince Parks and Rec employees to care about the difficulties walking into a rec center, or how many barriers to entry they get through when they're trying to register for a program or whatever. So I've always had, maybe I've had a huge red flag, and it's like I've said, I'm maybe softening up. It's not as big as I make it out to be, but I've always said there's no way I would do city management. And so, because it just feels terrible.
So Shane, just take them to climb the hill and then they can see.
Yeah, there you go.
So great discussion. And I'm really glad that you had commented, Tony, about the user experience. And, before we get into a little fun, which we kind of call our rapid fire round, where we like to get a little bit more info on who Tony is as a person.
Oh, really?
I think so. I think that's what it's about. Yeah.
Okay.
So before we do that, I would be completely remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you have already mentioned. So making connections, right? Why do we volunteer and be a part of all of these organizations like Copart or Supervisory Management School, right? The Academy, connections, and how that might relate to our user experience and how we can apply that on a day-to-day. I've met Tony in passing probably in the years, but I haven't worked with him, right? And so we worked together on Copart. And since then, we've had a couple conversations about something that we connected with, right? And that's the Disney experience. So I have to, if I have a guest, and trust me, there's more of us out there, guys. All right, Jay, even though you and Shane are not where we are, there are more. So I have to ask, and I want to start this question by reading your mission, your goal as a professional from your LinkedIn page. You talked about creating experiences. And I read this before we had you on a guest, and I just really loved it. My imperative is to work with communities and organizations to enable them to reach their full future potential by creating innovative environments and memorable experiences. We've talked a lot about that. That is extremely well put and very direct as to your why. Why are we doing what we're doing? So can you maybe talk a couple minutes about how you experience Disney? I could talk about it for hours, but they don't want to hear that from me. But you're our guest, so they have to listen. And like I said, there are others out there who definitely feel it. And I just wanted you to kind of share that experience, your Disney experience, what it has meant for you and how it's transitioned you to providing some user experiences in Miami Lakes or just your general recreation and parks professional journey.
Disney for me comes from a very young age, having the opportunity to go, young, and then go then as an adult. I feel always that I get transported and I get taken to a whole different place where my mind doesn't have to necessarily worry about anything, think about anything other than enjoying my time, experiencing the whole fantasy concept and the magic concept that comes with it. Obviously, we have to stay hydrated, right? It is Florida. For me, it is just, again, those magical experiences, those memorable moments, whether it be with friends or family that I've experienced at the parks. It's constant immersion. It's constant experience when you visit Disney. They tried very hard to maintain a environment that engages you and wants you to continuously engage with them. And I think that has translated so well into my profession in terms of what we do. It's about creating experiences. Every time someone comes to a park, they're having an experience. A child using a playground is creating a memory. And if that playground is there for the next 25 years, that's 25 years worth of memories. That is 25 years of people using your parks, whether it be from photos. I've had people get married in our park system. These translate well from the Disney experience. Obviously, their standard, right, of customer service is one to aspire to and aim for. But little things, right, the cleanliness, the people's, most of the time, enjoyment and how they feel. All of those things are things that, to me, I've been able to readily translate into working in a park system and our parks department.
Walt Disney once said, do what you do so well that people tell their friends and their family, and they do it so well that they want to come back. And that ultimately is maybe the best advice that we can give anybody that does what we do. We want them to leave this is my Disney experience, Tony, and you probably can relate a little bit, but
hold on. Tony, do you go as an adult, like you said, without kids or with kids?
Without.
There you go.
What the hell is going on?
We have another Parks and Rec professional that does that as well. But anyhow, there's a lot of us, and when I get on that flight or I'm about to get on whatever mode of transportation to get to the airport, when I'm leaving, that feeling is, I want to get back. When am I going to get back? And so many people, they experience that, and that's what we want to provide that experience. How do we get people back? How do we get them talking about what we're doing to their neighbors, their friends, to people in communities an hour away, so that we bring more people to the parks? And so I really can relate 100% to that. And guys, as you can tell, I'm not crazy. This is real. All right, this is a real, and Tony he put it so perfectly and politically correct to say that, yeah, not always people are enjoying, right? Because of the heat, the crying, yeah, it exists, but hey, it's a lot to learn from the example there, and I appreciate you sharing. So let's move on. Let's learn a little bit more about Tony. Rapid fire. We like to ask you a couple fun questions. They may be work related, they may be personal, and I'm going to start with something that you had told me yesterday. We didn't get a chance to chat more about it, but boxing. So where did your love from boxing come from? And maybe tell me a little bit about tell us who your favorite boxer is.
Was it the lines at Disney? Self-defense.
You get kicked out for that,
So, so boxing. My grandfather used to, way back when, make me stay up so I can watch boxing fights on pay-per-view with him, and that memory still stands to this day. Every time a big fight night or a big match, it's like a holiday for me, and the whole day, it's a holiday.
That's great.
I am prepping. I am getting ready. I am hosting. I have also been to live championship matches. I've been to matches in Las Vegas, and I've been to matches in Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
But for me, the tradition of and the spectacle is one thing, but it's that very fact that those two people may never be facing themselves in a ring ever again. It could be a one-time thing. It could be a one-time thing in history. So those are some of the things, especially with legacy sports, that keep me interested. And I love the history aspect of it, and just it's an event. It could be just one time. If there's a 3-time or even better, but sometimes it could just be a one-off. And those are the things that really excite me about.
Are you a boxing purist, or do you also enjoy MMA? Because some boxing fans don't like MMA, and some have appreciated that same concept in both.
I enjoy both. And I even I still remember watching UFC 1. So mainly because of Bloodsport. I don't know if anybody remembers Bloodsport.
It's a great movie.
Growing up, we always were like, can this be real? But it's evolved since UFC 1. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I remember we used to go to Blockbuster, just how old this is, and we would rent the UFC tapes and watch them. Yeah, it was that was a different time.
That's how I saw UFC 1. I rented it from Blockbuster.
Yeah, because you couldn't see them on TV. They weren't allowing that. But yeah, it's definitely evolved. Well, so how do you unwind? What does unwinding look like?
Did you say unwind or unwind?
Oh, yeah, either. Unwind. I don't ever enunciate anything all the way through. That's my problem.
Both, right? Mainly the way I unwind is especially when there's nothing to do. Watching sports, or just relaxing at home. If I have the time to actually cook and make a meal, enjoy doing that. If I have time to get together with friends, we actually have a group of friends that we get together, Parks and Rec professionals here in South Florida. We get together once a month to try to have an outing. And, we plan a whole outing all based on a restaurant and different places to go as a way to kind of distract ourselves and disconnect ourselves. I love traveling, constantly traveling. One of my favorite places is actually up in Tom's area in the Finger Lakes. I try to get out there annually, have a great wine country area, and enjoy unwinding that way. So sometimes just doing nothing, man. Just staying at home and having no deadlines or priorities or anything is also sometimes a privilege. So,
he didn't mention Disney as a relaxing spot. Just want to mention, but he did mention home.
It's part of my travels.
Put one on the scoreboard for me.
Listen, what Tony has that I am very envious of is he's 3.5 hours now by train to Disney. I don't have that luxury. So we had a great conversation about, he goes, well, Tom, when you travel to Florida, I'm going your way, right? So I'm going to the Finger Lakes and enjoying it, which I always thought was very interesting. And you take those things for granted, what you have in your own backyard, for sure. I gotta jump in, Jay. I just want to ask a follow-up question to what you said about cooking. We talk about food a lot here. The three of us were able to get down to Miami Lakes, and we're gonna have a meal with Tony. What's your go-to? What are you cooking us?
Ooh, Cuban food.
Okay, we're in.
Do we get a cigar too?
That can be that can happen.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
Only if you have it at Disney, then you can come.
I'll just bring my own. I have a tub. I don't need that.
Tony, you mentioned traveling. Where's the next city on your list to go to that you have never been to?
That I have never been to.
Yeah, like if you're planning a trip tomorrow and you get to go somewhere you've never been, where would it be?
Ooh. Well, in general, if I can take a trip tomorrow, one of the areas I'd love to visit is Singapore, mainly because of their city building, the way they have been able to manage their public services, I think, and develop a city. I hear it's very innovative, very forward thinking in how they have built their city. So that would be one of the first places that come to mind. But if I'm looking at a leisure destination, it'll definitely be like a tropical destination. Seychelles is one of them. Any of those islands, the Maldives. I mean, if I can just get up and go tomorrow, I'd be probably that would be my stopover destinations on the way to Singapore. So
Perfect.
So I was talking to Tom the other day on the phone, and I was a hidden talent. You remember that, Tom? Hidden talent, or a talent not everyone knows about. So what would be a talent that you have that a lot of people wouldn't know you have, or you had? Maybe it was something when you were younger, or something now that no one really knows about.
I'm really good at travel planning. Like a lot of people come to me if I would be a local concierge of sorts. I find a lot of people tend to contact me for restaurant recommendations, even if they're in a foreign city.
Love that.
I'm here. Do you have any spots? I have a real good knack of using Google and doing research and finding places and creating itineraries. I think it all ties into creating those experiences, right? Yeah. It just now going to conference soon in Atlanta, and everyone's saying, well, you're leading the tour. That's one thing that just comes naturally to me. That and putting together music playlists.
Well, that's fascinating.
Who's your favorite artist?
Artists. So I'm actually a big hip hop fan. Like to listen to a lot of different hip hop artists. You know, if there's
So George Strait.
But I can make a country mix. That's not a
There
problem.
we go. Now we're talking.
I'm on Apple Music. Me and my friend we try to coin ourselves as Apple Music curators. And but some people use Spotify, so we're open to both. But we're really good curating at different genres of music.
I like it.
I want to take you up on your offer. Not that you offered, but what you like to give a little bit of advice here and there to friends on food and travel. We just had the conversation this morning. Jay had texted and it said, "Hey, have you given any thought to any food while we're in Atlanta?" Right? We're always looking for gems while we're at these conferences, and we're definitely at this point doing Holman and Finch. Shane and I had a real experience. Talk about experiences. We had an experience there whenever that was, 12 years ago, known for their burger, which is now an all-time item, or it's available all the time. Back then, it was a little more exclusive. Is there a place in Atlanta that you can tell us, hey, you got to check this out food-wise?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to one of our regents, which is Chris Bass from Douglasville, Georgia. Try to find him in Atlanta. I'm sure he'll give some good recommendations. But obviously, the Varsity, a very traditional fast food spot in Atlanta. But if you're talking about steak,
we're talking
Keith Rathbun Steakhouse, one of the premier steakhouses in the country. Definitely one to if you can make it out to try to check out over there in Atlanta. But great comfort food. They even have a trap music museum
at Keith Rathbun or somewhere else?
No, in Atlanta.
Okay.
Looking for interesting things to do outside of the aquarium. But it's like the first museum, I think, dedicated to hip hop history. So one of the interesting finds that I've done some research on. I'm not sure how Six Flags is looking. So that's another opportunity if you're in Atlanta to try to make a trip out there. But based on the hurricane, I don't know how bad it's been impacted. If you want to speak easy, red phone booth downtown.
Phone booth.
Red phone booth.
Cigars, Shane, and all that.
Now we're talking.
Let's plan that. I want to go there.
Okay.
I want to go to Keith Rathbun first, and then we can go to the speakeasy after.
Did you write these down, Shane?
I wrote down Keith Rathbun. That's for sure.
Well, your local concierge can provide a text tour. So
awesome.
Tony, we had a great time. This was great. You are a wealth of knowledge, experience, and insight. Just really a pleasure to have you on here today. So thank you for making the time. We went a little over than we normally do, but for good reason.
All right, guys. It's been a pleasure. And I want to thank you for hosting me, but more importantly, for everything that you guys are doing for the profession. Your podcast has been a smash hit with everyone in our profession. Keep doing it. Keep it going. Keep it growing. And thank you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for
our pleasure.
Tony, show up Tuesday. We'll get you your RecLess shirt.
He's not getting until Wednesday, but we'll see him at the banquet.
Oh, okay.
We'll get him the shirt.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Sounds good.
Have a good one.
All right. Take care, Tony.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tony.
He was great. He always been great. Someone I've looked up to since I almost got into this profession. He was the young professional before there was an industry for young professionals. He was the one. He was the one I thought of. He was the one I reached out to. Anytime I ever had a young professional question, it was always like, I got to reach out to Tony and see what he says.
You know, there's people, and I said, you know, he's a wealth of knowledge, experience, insight. There's people that I could listen to talk for a long time. He's one of them, right? He's so well spoken, and everything he says is very well thought out. Just a great resource. I hope individuals that were listening today, you know, take him up on that offer potentially to reach out to him here and there. And you can find him on LinkedIn too. But Tony was great conversation.
Yeah, I was excited to see him on. That's cool. And that he's going into the academy. Great for him.
Yeah, very excited.
All right, guys. I guess that's a wrap on 49. We're looking to 50, which is going to be happening live.
Yeah, live.
Yes.
50 is live on a Monday at conference. I'm pumped. We got that Monday session episode. We got Tuesday gathering, a Wednesday session, some t-shirts to give out.
Yeah.
Couldn't get any better. Come a long way.
It'll be a busy
Do you
week.
want a hint for who the guest is Monday?
Yes.
Can you give us one right now?
Sure, they're going to be at conference.
They're going to be in Atlanta.
There you go. There's your guest.
All right. Well, on that note, everybody,
that narrows it down to about 8,000 people.
Yeah.
We will see you all next time on RecLess for episode 50, where you will get to try to guess based off of that amazing clue that Jay just presented for us. All right. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
See ya.